So lots of stuff has happened, and you guys have admitted that sometimes accidents happen, like with the Conquest, it just didn't work. We don't want to get too hung up on that. Something went wrong. I'm sure you can't tell. Maybe you can tell us. Is there something that went wrong, or did it just not launch successfully and you had to pull it back and get it out?
I mean, it was a confluence of a bunch of different issues together that was like, this is not the experience that we want to put out there. That we're not happy with this, and it became, kind of snowballed to the point where like, okay, no, we've got to pull it down and try and reschedule this and rework it. And credit to the team for working super hard to get those bugs solved that they had problems with, knock them all out, and then
Oh,
get the conquest
yeah.
back up to day. Like pretty fast turnaround for all of that, which I'm very very happy about. So but there probably no like one specific thing that was like, oh well, that's the deal breaker. It was a lot of straws that eventually broke the camel's back.
So just coding stuff that people who don't know how to code wouldn't understand, and we just got to kind of, something went
I mean,
wrong.
making games is hard, man. If everyone could do it,
Yeah,
we'd be in a
sometimes
different world.
sometimes
And
you
I,
move things and Baba is no longer you, and then it just doesn't work. I understand.
yeah, I mean, like this is not to said like make excuses here or for the team and for us putting out something that we weren't happy with. That's totally not okay. But like making games is a very complicated thing, especially making a game that's been around for this long. There's a lot of levers and stuff
Hmm.
tied together that makes it hard to sometimes make sure all of this works properly. And I know some people are like, oh, why didn't you QA this? Like we extensively went through and tested this thing. I have a test group that I worked with that also like tested the bunch, and a bunch of this stuff like just didn't show up with that because it was a different environment for whatever reason. Or there's a lot of different factors that could happen about why it went out the way it did. But ultimately it sucks. It's like definitely not the kind of quality we want to put out. And
But you
so
guys bounced back
um
pretty quickly. I was actually pleasantly surprised
yeah,
at the
so
at
and
the
I said I'm
rebound.
happy with how fast we pivoted and got back in the game here, because I think if we'd like people have been wanting to get back into Conquest, there's been this delays to get this one launched in the first place, and then like to delay that like weeks and weeks further would have been like
Oh
not great for us. So we
yeah.
hopped on that as fast as we could and got it back out there.
So I have another question from one of my guildmates, and hopefully this is something that you can answer because it's Mike David's question. He's a great guy. We're simming the Sith raid sometime in the future. You guys have said as much.
Mhm.
How are the rewards going to look like? Is it he specifically said top 3, top 10? What is the reward structure, or do you guys even know at the current moment what the reward structure for simming the raid is? Because like for other raids, you don't get
Um,
max rewards, but you get close enough, so it's more even. Do you guys
I
have that
will.
ironed out?
I don't know personally what the answer to that question is. I will say that it's likely to be similar to what you see with the other sim raids. But I don't know for sure about what the final plans are for that. I don't know if they're I have not looked into it, so it could be that they're done and I just haven't seen it, or it could be still in progress right now. I honestly cannot speak to it in depth just because I'm ignorant of those things at the moment.
Fair enough. Question from L Skywalker 77, and you've actually talked on this, and this is one of the reasons where I used to be a big I'll admit a hater of CG. You guys in the last couple of years have been a lot more forward facing, and I appreciate that. And I think a lot of bad blood has kind of been resolved because you guys have communicated more. And we don't know, we're not privy to what's going on in the future. So just like when mods came out, when relics came out, like it makes sense, and we're happy that they're there now, but in the moment we don't understand it. So L Skywalker 77 says, how does CG believe the overall player base will feel about the changes in, like, say, the next 6 months to the next year? Do you think in that
Mhm.
time frame it's going to wrap together and we'll kind of see what you guys have been seeing for months?
Yeah, it's hard because it's so much of this is a long-term plan, and I think you hit it on the head earlier of like, when we were, prior to say Conquest and Galactic Challenges, we're kind of in a mode of like, cool, we got to get a lot of stuff done, and people kind of just have to trust us that we'll get to that point. And things like the relic system as well felt like initially like, oh, like why are they adding this layer of progression? But I think over time people said like, oh, this actually like democratizes power in this game, that like different characters when you relic them up can now compete in a way that they couldn't before. And so there's a long-term vision for a lot of this stuff, and I think like a lot of the changes we had recently definitely tie into what's going to be happening over the next 6 to 8 to 9 months. I wish we could talk more about it honestly, because I think
Of
that would
course, yeah,
it
but
would
you
make
can't.
more
I get.
sense to like to see the whole picture would be great, I think. Like, but we are in a point where so much stuff is potentially changing, or things are locked in but we just can't talk about them at this time. Like, that it would be great to communicate, but I think ultimately we can't right now. But I think honestly in the next 6 months, I think There will be some really cool, exciting wins for the players coming out, and there'll be some really cool stuff that people will get to like wrap their hands around and go like, wow, I never expected this to happen. So without like promising too much, because I know that sounds like way exciting, but I think there'll be some really cool stuff coming to Galaxy Heroes, and I think a lot of this stuff will make sense in like retrospect.
I'm sure it will. I mean, when like I stated those previous changes, like there was a big outroar because we never really know exactly what's going on, and since so much can change, new shows can come out, new members can be added to the team, new ideas can surface. That's, you know, you don't want to get our hopes up, and I understand that. One of the best wins, I think anyone will agree, for the player base was the rework to Darth Vader back when he became from the worst character ever to like the best character ever. And I understand how he had some interactions that you guys didn't want to occur with certain characters, and then you kind of rolled that back a little bit. Are you guys happy with how his culling blade performs? Is that what was anticipated? Is it working? I mean, I'm not going to cast judgment. I mean, you guys gave me like the greatest moment of my life. Darth Vader is my favorite character, but is that an anticipated effect that his culling blade would be this basically weaker than his basic, or is that just, you know, how it happens or how it
it's definitely something we're monitoring. I think it is, you know, the balance is an ongoing process inside Galaxy Heroes, right? It is definitely never going to be the same and never going to be static. So there's definitely some like questions around, does Darth Vader still feel like Darth Vader? Does he capture like one of the most iconic characters in the entire Star Wars universe? You would argue that like most of the stories around the story of Darth Vader or Anakin, maybe prior to the recent trilogies, but like it is about, you know, Darth Vader is just such a like iconic part of the Star Wars universe. Like when you think of Star Wars, you think of probably Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, that kind of like, he's at like that tier of like, you know, just the most iconic stuff in the world. And so I think we want to make sure we maintain that. And, you know, the long answer to your question is like, well, definitely something we want to look into. I'm not sure we're entirely happy with it. We'll have to see like how it all works out. I think we don't want to pull the trigger too fast on changes. I think it's easy to then like give people whiplash back and forth if we keep making changes too quickly, but also we want to be able to pivot when we feel like it's not going the direction we want to. So it's going to be something that we're going to look at. And, you know, I'll say there are people inside the studio who are very much into like, how do these changes impact everyone's experience at a very like nitty gritty level. So, you know, we'll definitely be taking a look at it, and maybe there's some changes in the future. I don't know at this time, but you know, maybe it'll be something we announce at some point.
All right, so I'm going to slap you with the biggest haymaker of all time. I did not prepare you for this. You were absolutely going to be romple-stomped.
Oh,
you know, metas change. That's fine. And requirements change. When are you going to bump up Clone Wars Chewie shards from 3 to 4? It's a little ridiculous. This is not 2015.
Well, look, okay, first off, it should be 3 to 6, right? Because the shards got doubled. So 3 to 4 makes no sense. It should be 6.
Well, then inflation 7. Why not give us 7? Why is it 3?
No, because we doubled the shard rate for stuff. 6 is the right number here, and that is something that like I can't remember which. There was an issue we had, and I was organizing the compensation for it, and what it had 3 Clone Wars Chewie shards, and someone on Reddit was like, "Why is it not 6?" And I was like, "That's a great question. Why is it not that?" And so I went to the team immediately. Was like, "I'm amending what I said earlier. We're doing 6 Chewie shards." And so I think that'll be the standard going forward is 6 Chewie shards. I think that should be the standard, and I will fight for that until my dying breath. That should be the case.
That's good, because I know where you guys work, and I have access to a lot of 4.5-year-old children. So if I don't see 6 Chewie shards next time a holiday or something wraps around, you're going down. Send me a message
on the forums, or come by the studio.
That better be in my inbox.
With a boom box over your head.
I'll wait for the first day it rains in Sacramento to go out there, which apparently might never happen because California hates rain. I haven't seen rain in forever.
It doesn't exist anymore.
All right, so I have a question from Natasha Winfield, one of my guildmates. She's in our guild. She's big on TWs and stuff. And I wouldn't say a problem, more of like a gamey min-max feature is how you could interact with territory wars by like reducing number of guildmates. Is that something that you guys are monitoring? Is that something that's just going to exist? Is there anything that you can say about, you know, how you can cheese TW by like reducing players and kind of sandbagging in that way? Or is that just something that you can't talk about at the moment?
It's an interesting question. There are lots of discussions going on around territory wars and how we potentially address things like that with like sandbagging your guild and not bringing in the full squads and things like that. Yeah, I think that's probably the right thing to say. Is that, it's definitely something we're looking at, and there's a lot of conversations happening about that actually right now inside the studio. So, not to say there's going to be specific changes around that, but I would say that there's definitely some chances that that might happen in the future, where we address that in some way, or figure out how to make some changes to territory wars at a larger scale.
That's good to hear. I don't particularly enjoy territory wars too much. I mean, I get carried by my guild, so I guess I'm not really in a position to complain one way or the other as the baby Yoda that's getting dragged around by my ankles. Speaking of, I just took a sip of chalky milk. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. What's your favorite flavor of chalky milk? Some people like white chocolate milk. Some people like chalky milk, strawberry chalky milk. What's your favorite chalky milk flavor?
Well, I mean, white chocolate is not chocolate, right? And is this an argument?
Sorry, I meant normal. I meant vanilla chalky milk. The stuff that comes straight out of the cow. Vanilla chalky milk.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, no, just the straight chalky milk, man. That is the jam. Like, if I could eat and drink an infinite number of calories in the day, I would just drink chocolate milk all the time, pretty much. I'm drinking the essence of life. I'm drinking some water right now, but that is because I need to survive and to hydrate, which is always important. Definitely hydrate. Drink a glass of water right now. You probably haven't drank enough water today, so do that. It's important to stay hydrated. This is your Crumb health hour advice
PSA.
here.
Yeah, I think the next time you guys put out an ad on like Facebook or YouTube or wherever, it's not gonna have anything to do with the game. It's just gonna be your face, like, guys, you got to be drinking water. I get it, the holo tables are very vicious these days, but you got to be drinking water.
Drink your water. Yeah, in my bathroom, I have a big poster from the CDC from when they partnered with Star Wars to talk about vaccinations in like the 70s, and so it's C-3PO and R2 telling you to get vaccinated, which is, I think, hilarious. So not far off what Star Wars has done in the past of giving life-saving PSAs to people.
All right, I have a question from Ricardo. Gonna assume he's Spanish or Portuguese. I'm not gonna throw a guess at how to pronounce his last name because that's just gonna be a lawsuit right there. He says, and I don't know if this is a question that you can actually answer, but I thought I'd ask him just in case. You can always, if any of these questions you know you can't answer, I totally understand that. I've been in similar situations where just say
do
we
what
can't
I can.
comment. He says, what is the incentive for new players to farm old GLs if the new ones are just so much better? Is that something you guys are monitoring? Is it like phasing out old GLs and we should always just get the new ones if we're new to the game? Because a lot of my audience is newer players who haven't been around for super long. They don't have all the teams, and they got to quickly decide like what is the good stuff that's coming out that I should go for. Is that something you guys are thinking about?
Yeah, definitely. About like what does a world look like in Galaxy Heroes where there are six galactic legends, right? And I think they're all around the same kind of power level. There is some differences between them for sure. And the idea, I think, is also to just like, if you're getting in the door, you probably still want to go for like a Rey or actually probably Supreme Leader Kylo Ren is probably what you want to go for initially. The requirements a little bit easier to get through. It sets you up for a bunch of other teams, or like C can also help you get a bunch of other good teams together as you get towards that as well. And then like as you progress further and your roster grows, it becomes easier to get some of the harder GLs and things like that. And so it is not to say that like, the ones that have more that are more intensive to unlock are strictly going to always be better, but like there should be a progression to that so that you are getting through all the different GLs at different parts of your life cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you guys just revamped, I would say, re-illustrated the journey guide. I actually at first I was like, why is the journey guide not here? I always go into that little thing on the right looking for the journey guide, and it's never there. I'll learn one day, but you guys are doing a really good job of, it seems like, giving new players who maybe don't watch YouTube videos or aren't invested in the forums or whatever, like a way to just tell if they're by themselves, like, this is the progression, this is what you should do. And I appreciate that. As someone who talks mostly to newer players, I think it's really important that they know, like, you get this character and then you get this character and then these characters are more powerful, so maybe you should wait off a little bit. So actually a big fan of the journey guide updates. Speaking of art related stuff, I don't know why this is always the biggest thing, but are we getting, you can't say who, but are we getting more art updates? Because they're amazing. I mean, Count Dooku is so beautiful. He's at Gear 8, and I still use him in GAC because he's just so beautiful. Yeah,
that new model for Dooku is so good. It's just perfectly Christopher Lee. I love it. Yeah, I mean, the art team is, like they're they are splitting their time with a lot of different projects at once, right? They're always having many different things in motion at any given moment. So, you know, obviously we'd love to go back and like rework all the characters to bring them update, because as the game has grown, like our style has grown, our ability to make these characters with higher polygons has grown. You know, we have better tools to do this kind of stuff, and you can see that with like some of these later characters, like, you know, Cara Dune looks like amazingly like the character as well, and like I said, Count Dooku with the update. There are some really cool ones. I think like we will always be splitting our energy there, and if we have spare cycles to do that, like we're not just going to sit around and do nothing. We're going to go, cool, we're in between projects, let's go and rework some of these characters to look more awesome. You know, we'd love that to be part of a larger thing that's happening, or a reason to do that. You know, so like the Dooku update, we knew we were going to do some kind of things around, you know, maybe Lord Vader and maybe Dooku's in those events. So like, what if we make sure we update these as we're going through some of these other things, right? So there's a more of a logic to it than just we just like pick a character who we don't want to do and then we'll just update them. It is more around like what makes sense given what's coming up. How do we get more value out of like maybe an event or something like that if we add them in there or rework their character? We're already going to do maybe something around that, so what if we just did a little bit more with the free time we have to make that even better, you know? So yeah, definitely there'll be more of those coming in the future. I can't say like when or where or who, but
of course.
we're going to keep making those characters look awesome.
No, I hate to break it to you, and as a member of the community, I'm not sure if I like it. You just made CG sound competent. Are you saying that you guys know what you're doing? And you guys aren't just a bunch of...
Whoa! I wouldn't.
Are you saying that you don't hate us? You don't hate us?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the folks inside the studio like love this game and they love Star Wars, right? Like I think it was funny, we were doing the Cubs interview with CG Miller, right? And everyone was like, "Oh, he knew the Punishing one." Oh my God.
I was gonna say that earlier. I was like,
you know, he knows it. It's like you just don't realize how big of a nerd he is, right? Like he just knows all this stuff at the top of his head. Like don't pretend that that's a hint about something that's coming. He's just a nerd. And you say the name of it. You say that, oh, it's so and so ship. He knows the name of the ship straight off the top of his head. He like said knows so many little details about stuff and how, and then specifically how to spell them for me, which is helpful when I'm writing up posts about this. Being like, how does this actually spelled? What's the difference between Mandalore with the apostrophe versus Mandalore, the other one version of it, versus the planet versus the person versus the title versus the mantle that gets shifted around? What do all those mean again? so
Lore Master MVP Miller, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we don't have a specific lore master inside the studio, but I think he gets that title as just inadvertently for how much he knows about things. But yeah, I mean, I think like there is a plan. There are lots of people who are working on this project to try and figure out long term how this thing goes forward. And since you talked about like investing in the early game experience, making sure new players are coming into this game, that's the sign of a game that is wanting to go on for a lot longer. You don't start reworking the infrastructure because you feel like you're going out the door. You do that because you want this game to go on for as long as possible. So I think there's a good amount of foresight that the team has about like what is coming down the pipeline and what we want to do now to start supporting that. You know, I think when I joined the studio, I came in and I was like, wait, why have we not done like regular Chewbacca or 3PO, right? It's like, well, because we know that those are iconic characters and we want to meter them out over the course of the lifespan of this game. Like if we went out day one with every iconic character, then like where do we go next, right? We start digging deeper and deeper into the whole of side characters and people who are maybe only mentioned in the credits in some degree, right? Like there's a foresight to this that this team has about looking at this thing holistically for years to come that I don't think becomes apparent until you've gotten there, right? Like you look back on it, it's like, oh, we've had great characters to unlock since the start of this game. That is not just an accident. That is because people have planned this very specifically about how this arc all goes. That's not to say we don't pivot around stuff and we don't like rethink what we're doing. It is that there is a core thing that we're working towards and that we're always trying to come up with the next set of plans and making sure we're working towards the next thing, next to the next thing, and down the road. You know, when we talked about having a 10, 20-year plan for this game, that's not a joke. That is something that the studio very much takes to heart around making sure that we are trying to do what's best for it. And some of these changes are like eating your vegetables a little bit, right? Where it's like, we got to do this for the long-term health of the game. We know that the game needs this, and so we're going to make those changes. And they may not be popular in the moment, but people will see this down the road when we do other stuff that this all makes sense together. So, yeah, I would go as far as to say, I think, you know, we do a pretty good job of that. It may not come off like that sometimes, and I totally understand, but you know, we try really hard to make this thing awesome. So.
And I think one of the best things you guys have been doing is because you guys have always had a plan. There's always been progression. You guys have always had it mapped out. But sometimes for the player base, especially like before I made YouTube videos, I definitely fell into this. But now you and Doja especially are more forward facing and saying like, hey guys, there is a plan. And I find that reassurance very, I don't want to say comforting, but like, you know, it gives me security in knowing that like, oh, they're not just, you know, everyone says, oh, the Capital Games is money hungry pig. Like there is progression in this game. This interacts with this, so this can't do this. I understand it now more because you guys are so forward facing with, hey guys, sometimes there are realities of game development that we can't just keep remaking kits around, you know, Thrawn's fracture if we don't want Thrawn to fracture. At some point we got to actually make changes. So I'm very appreciative of that. I think that's put it into a new frame for me that kind of is more, I don't know what this, I'm just kind of like rambling at this point. It's comforting, so I appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying, and let's also be clear, like we're not perfect. We make mistakes, and we also said we try and learn from those mistakes and pivot off them when we can. So you know, like when we see a problem, we're going to try and take our best shot at solving it. And you know, it's just an ongoing thing. This game is not solved tomorrow, right? It is something that we're going to constantly be working and struggling with and trying to make sure this game is great. And yeah, I think like having more faces out there really helps to just like add a human element to the whole thing. But like we're not just a faceless group of people trying to make this game and take all your money. We are people who are passionate about this game and love this game, and we want to be here. You know, I think one of my best experiences is live events, right? And I'm sad we haven't been able to do those for quite a while. But like when we went to Star Wars Celebration, and you know, a lot of people got to meet myself, and I brought a bunch of designers with me to like just chat about what they were working on. And you know, I think you saw on Reddit over the like couple days we were there that like, wow, I just got to meet these guys, and they know what they're talking about. They're so excited. They love this thing. I can't believe I said something about them that I made in maybe in a moment of extreme passion that I didn't realize like how awesome these people are. And I think once you get to see and meet some people, like everyone in the studio I've talked to is awesome. Like I love everyone I get to work with. I think they all care about this game deeply. And I think that passion, like when it was quiet, it's hard for that passion to come across and to see the other side of the coin on that. But truly, I think the more we can get out there and the more we can like share what we're doing and communicate this stuff like as early as we can about it, and I'd love to get more of the team's face out there to describe what they're doing. And I think like people will see that there are very smart people. I think Cubs, you know, last time we're again on that stream was like talking about how when he got to come out to CG and he sat next to a guy and he was just like blown away with how like of a deep mechanical understanding he has of every piece of this game to a level that like no one else understands, right? And there are people of all types of that in this studio that care about different segments or big swaths of this game. And I just want to share that as much as I can with the people out there, because I think it is reassuring, and it does feel like, oh, okay, cool, they do know what they're talking about sometimes, and they're not all just idiots out there, you know. So hopefully we can do that more.
They were idiots, man.
You know, sometimes I question myself, so maybe
okay,
I'm just the idiot.